Us today for the second in our series of professionals in sustainability webinars. And we will be starting at 1:05. Please mark your calendars for the final event of this series. Here on the screen is Hannah Sanger with the city of Pocatello, Idaho. And my name is Kathy Lang. I work in the Open Academy at ESF with the Sustainability Management Online Degree Program. And I will be moderating questions following our presentation. So feel free to submit any you might have through the chat to me until we open up for Q&A at the end. So with that, I will turn it over to John Turbeville, our Assistant Dean of Student Affairs and Director of Career Services, to introduce our guest speaker. Thank you again.
Thanks so much, Kathy. I'm excited to introduce today's presenter, Ms. Gillian Giem, who serves currently as the Program Manager for the USGBC of West Michigan. Gillian's humble beginnings at ESF landed her a work-study position in career services with me. And right from the beginning, I could see her unwavering passion for energy and economics. She graduated from ESF in December of 2016 with a BS in Sustainable Energy Management and a minor in economics. Before holding her role with the USGBC of West Michigan, she was a researcher for the National Green Highways Mission and the National Highways Authority in India. Her current position with the USGBC, Gillian, how do you say that all the time? Is where she manages keystone programs, putting into practice her passion for carbon neutral, carbon positive economies, sustainable cities, and climate change solutions, which are prosperous and equitable. We're happy to have Gillian with us today to share her experiences with all of you. And without further ado, I'll turn things over to her.
Thank you. So do you see my slides right here? And anything else on my screen, or just the slides? Great, thank you so much. Thank you, Kathy and John, for the opening remarks, and thank you to the Open Academy and the Career Services Department for this opportunity to be back. I'm seeing some friendly names and some new names in attendance today, and I can't wait to talk with you. I do miss ESF. So I'll start with a story because I'm all about stories. So, you know, just like everybody who goes to ESF, you're a big tree hugger, right? And you want to be the Lorax in a way of like speaking for the environment. And so I tell the story because I had every intention of coming in with like a forestry understanding. But the more that you keep your eyes on the prize and you want to save the forests, for example, you learn what actually is making the forest vulnerable, which made me get really interested in the energy solutions of the way that humans are operating on this planet. So in the end, I did graduate with a sustainable energy management degree. And even though I had swore I never do economics, I love economics now. And so this is just a little antidote to you know, the takeaway is to keep your eyes on the end goal of what you want to do and be really flexible to where the roadmap brings you, right? Because when you first start, you may find that you would be anticipating a different roadmap than you lead, but it's still the sweetest. So thank you for the opportunity to speak today. And I wanted to give a context for simultaneously what makes me go to work and also what keeps me up at night, right? And I'm not one for it to have a lot of words on a slide, but I think that this is really paramount. So go ahead and read, and I'll be reading with you. It's that the world is currently undergoing the largest wave of urban growth in human history. More than half the globe population that currently exists in the urban areas will be from half to 2/3 of expected population of 10 billion will be living in cities. So to put this into context, this is by 2060, the world is projected to add a 2.5 square footage of trillions. And this is equivalent to the global building stock already. So this is like adding another New York City to the planet every 34 days for the next 40 years. This is from Architecture 2030. They're the think tank out in the West Coast. Perhaps y'all know of them. So if the world cannot handle how we're handling our resources now in our consumption, it's sure not going to be able to take care of us when we are growing at such an alarming rate. So the urban growth that we have here is actually not the enemy, it's the solution. It's one of the greatest opportunities to find ways to live in a way that is carbon neutral if we're able to tackle how we handle cities. So at the USGBC of West Michigan, I said it, John, nice and fast, we're concentrated on the urban centers of how they're designed and managed. And this context leads to how we develop our programs, or rather what I do with our programs, right? Because that was one of the questions is, what is my daily life like? And to have a fun spin on this, I'm the program manager of the USGBC of West Michigan, headquartered here in Grand Rapids. Come take a visit. We love visitors. The USGBC of West Michigan's mission is to transform the way that buildings and communities are designed and built and operated. And this is from the greater vision of investing in the vibrancy and in the health of communities through energy reductions, specifically because of carbon reductions. So high performance buildings, walkable cities, renewable energy generation. This is our piece of a very complex sustainability puzzle. So my mom thinks that I build buildings, and my boss thinks I do much more math than I actually ever do. And I think that I'm somewhere in between, right? Before COVID, I was pursuing climate change solutions from my laptop, either speaking with people one-on-one or talking about strategic programming, like in the office or at a coffee shop. Because sometimes, believe it or not, there was a little bit of traveling involved, and that was kind of fun. But so in a nutshell, what I do on a daily basis is stakeholder engagement. Sierra Adkins is a lawyer here locally. I always try to make sure that I give credit to where I heard something from. She told me that your network is your net worth. And that kind of sounds like, oh, you got to be friends with everybody. And in a way, it's that make sure that you're able to keep your relationships going and be able to manage relationships within your organizations and between organizations. That's going to help very much with sustainability, as it's inherently a very collaborative field. So right now, that looks more like Zoom and email, but I'm looking forward to being able to get back everybody safely. And then managing energy information is something that I also do. I think that's where my Excel comes in. Keeping that up to date for reports and presentations, being able to create reports for a building owner that we work with, and also for grant and budget and program management. Inherently, that's always going to be a part of being in a nonprofit. And honestly, it's kind of fun work. That is all to keep the grind going from the bigger picture of public facing presentations and resource creation is a large piece of what you do as a program manager that's trying to convince building owners to be sustainable. And to keep it from a higher level of what I do, it's all about the intersectionalities of things. We're trying to take care of people's health. We're trying to take care of the planet. We're trying to develop our cities in profitable and marketable ways because we're caring about the quality of life that we all have together. So the programs I'm just gonna very lightly dabble into all have these intersectional approaches. And the takeaway I want to show here is that we can have these intersectional approaches and we can have different programs coming from that because there are multiple needs from the audience that you're working with. So to start with the Michigan Battle of the Buildings, the branding is really strong on this program. The ACEEE has named it as the nation's largest energy reduction competition. And it's widely successful because it's fun. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's because it's fun that people continue to come and make it what it is. Because it's not a Reach for the Stars program, it's a raising the bar program, raising the bottom up and up and up. And the reason why we do this is because people have all sorts of their reasons why. At ESF, we all have very similar reasons why, our why, but we also have to worry about our how. And so if we can do our how in a way that includes so many other people's whys, we can bring the level up. So through this voluntary energy reduction program, nothing to do with regulation, nothing to do with carrots and sticks, just a friendly competition where we wine and dine people at the end of where we give you people awards. This program has grown to 234 million square feet across Michigan. It has saved more than 200,000 CO2e, and it has saved us as a collective almost $25 million staying in the local economy and not going to utility companies because that's energy that we no longer are consuming. So to transition real quick to the Grand Rapids 2030 district. The Grand Rapids 2030 district is Grand Rapids' 2030 district, and there's 20 more, coincidentally also 20, probably there's 21 or 22 by now because Great Canada is being involved. But these are all cities that are aligning with the Paris Climate Accord, but not cities, building owners that are aligning themselves with the Paris Climate Accord, which is a huge public-private partnership. So we have Grand Rapids, Ann Arbor, Detroit, and Michigan. Over by y'all, there is Erie and Burlington, New York City is one. And here in Grand Rapids, we have 258 buildings participating, which is about 16.3 million square feet. And they're all dedicated in a customized fashion to draw down carbon, increase the marketability, profitability of themselves and their community, and increase the overall vitality for us currently living and the generations that we hope to continue to bring here. But see, the thing is, here's the catch. So I told you that we have about 250 buildings in the 23 district, but there's 62,000 buildings in Grand Rapids. But half of them are residential. And only 6,000 of other buildings are zoned commercial. And 91% of those commercial buildings are less than 20,000 square feet. This is a completely different demographic than what New York City or even Erie would be experiencing, or Burlington too, for that matter, right? So one of the really unique things about the 2030 districts is that, again, as what the story was, you have your eyes on the prize, but everybody has their own roadmap to be getting there. So when we are focusing here on Grand Rapids about how to reduce our carbon footprint from the buildings, we have now the third logo over, the Energy Assistance Program, which has become much more flourishing than what we had originally anticipated for, but that's why you keep yourself adaptive. So it's naturally bilingual because one of the biggest barriers for folks to be able to participate in programs is language. And what we do with this program is we hire professional auditors who are professional stakeholders from the 2030 district to do customized audits for each of these smaller buildings, these hard to reach building sectors as we call them. We give them customized audits and translate to the language that they need, talking to them about what their best ROI would be, best NPV for each ECM. ECM is energy conservation measure. So for what would work, let's say you got refrigeration, you got lighting, and you got insulation. Depending on who you are, doing one over the other is better for your particular business. It's not a one size fits all when it comes to energy reduction. And that's what the Energy Assistance Program we were able to do for them. So that was generally speaking, the programs that we run. And folks, if you have any questions about them, put it in the chat. When we get to the end of this, I would love to chat with you guys. I'd love to keep this conversation going. So this particular slide is a testament to what this year has been. I mean, I don't know if you guys have been living under a rock, but this last year has been very interesting, hasn't it? This year for us, almost overnight, Michigan really shut down very quickly. Our facilities managers had to figure out what to do with their buildings because their buildings are still going to exist with or without people. So some folks shut down immediately, our restaurants, our venues. And then on the other hand, our campuses, such as our hospital campuses, increased, right? And I was just so proud of our construction workers, for example, who donated so much of their PPE to our health hospitals to be like a part of the community to help them during this strange time. So what was really interesting and what a point I want to bring up is that our venues turned immediately from concert hall to like bed space. And so what was interesting is I'm thinking of two particular venues. One venue contacted our homeless shelters and that you need to space out more. Is there a way that we can use our space to help you space? And then another venue had talked with the hospital staff on what do you need to use this space for? But see, neither of these buildings were built to have the performance levels of the healthcare systems, right? So what do they need to know? What do they need to do to prepare themselves for an unprecedented virus in conditions that are made for literally like Mariah Carey? You know what I mean? And so one thing that I really enjoyed about this last year is that weekly we were doing resources and webinars and resource connections of, you know, what does ASHRAE say? What does OSHA say? What's the new CDC update? Because we all know that was changing. Um, but something that did not slow down, one force that did not move a muscle was cannabis. Cannabis industry has been legalized completely in Michigan. And, excuse me, and they've been like a force just coming into, I don't mean this in a negative way, into the city, and that this is an emerging industry and there's a lot of demand for it. So I think one thing to take note of here, folks, is that the cannabis industry is very energy intensive, and I mean very energy intensive. So this is according to Mills 12, published in Energy Policy, quote, the carbon footprint for indoor cannabis production. And he cites that on average, 1 kilogram of final product is associated with 4,600 kilograms of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. To put that in perspective, nationwide, that's equivalent of 3 million average cars being put onto our grid. And so this is not like bad cannabis industry. That's not what I mean. This is what to say is that this is what it means to try to get to carbon neutral. We're going to have all sorts of different industries coming on. Imagine if like we were just learning how to fly planes during this time and people were demanding international transportation. You're going to be having these things frequently. So how do you balance that we need to get to carbon neutral quickly and that markets are constantly going to be demanding other things at the same time? You need to be able to have that social lubricancy of being able to fit multiple needs with this end goal or else. And I think that's what has been really fascinating for me from like a big perspective of what the cannabis industry has showed me about what it actually means to achieve sustainability. So a question I was asked is, what skills and knowledge base from SUNY ESF have I used on a daily basis? And I'm really fortunate to say that pretty much all the skills and the knowledge that I've learned at SUNY, I use in some way or the other. To keep it high level, systems thinking and critical thinking skills. That is something that you can find for whatever job you go into. Personally, I use a lot of my understanding of electric grids and how like the physics of how thermal bridging works and how we move energy through a building. And also just the grander political spheres which we work with when we're talking about energy. The building sciences, I probably took like maybe 1 or 2 classes with Dr. Cravella, but I still have that. Oh, I still have that book, and I use it frequently. Talking about you know, small businesses, how to actually just read their utility bill, stack effect, R value, that you should invest in energy efficiency before on-site renewable generation. This is all stuff that from building sciences, which I used frequently. Essentially everything Excel. Being able to talk to somebody about their money is always a good skill to have. Something to quick note here too is that just recently, I've actually started dusting off my GIS skills. And so this is to say that courses that are like software oriented, like iTree, CAD, Salesforce, Energy Star Portfolio Manager, any of that stuff, not only is it transferable skills, but it's almost like evergreen skills. Like you're always going to be able to use it in some regard. When I have the word language here, I'm meaning it's always good to be bilingual, but I also mean bilingual in jargon and acronyms and being able to speak the language of engineers or foresters or policymakers. Being able to be adaptable with your language is a really good skill that started at ESF. And lastly, the work world. I don't want to say real world, but the work world is a constant medley of group projects. And the more efficient you can get with strong communication when it comes to group projects, the more effective of a professional and a peer that you'll be at SUNY ESF. And so how did I get to where I am right now? To keep it to the gist of things, I was a transfer student. So maybe I had a little bit of yikes, need to catch up, right? And I joined a lot of clubs. And so I would just say that the Sustainable Energy Club gave me the most professional experience. The Student Environmental Education Coalition and the Con Bio Club were not really related to my degrees, but I would not have changed that at all. Those two things combined with SU rugby really helped diversify my exposures and gave me a well-rounded approach to what college was all about. A little stint with USA, I think a big lesson here for me is that if you're confronted with something which you're simultaneously intimidated by but honored by, you should say yes to it. For me, Ben Taylor had invited me to be the director of programming for USA, and I was like, "Eek, that sounds like a lot of work, yikes!" But it sounded really interesting, and so I went with it because not many decisions in life are absolutely finite. You can adapt it, and I'm really glad I had the opportunity to participate in USA in that way. So when I can, I try to say yes. And boop. So this is a little box of the things that I think helped me in the more practical ways. I'm thankful I had a bicycle. Okay, let's be practical. I'm glad I had a bicycle. And I'm glad I got the hang of office hours. I'm glad I figured out where the free food and the naps were. Definitely figured that out, y'all. And I got creative as a transfer student. I don't know if any of you guys are transfer students, but I got creative with how to move my credits around. And I am not a type A person, not a type A person. But when I say keep a calendar, I meant like know by the end of the week what I had to get done and be able to parcel it around in ways that made me an effective student and a happy person, right? And a well-slept person too. And lastly, anytime you get a chance, do say yes to an opportunity. Some things that maybe I would have been able to do differently if I had the opportunity was the way that I followed up with professionals when I met them. So Pat Wickersham taught me to like write a little detail about somebody on a card if I was given it, and then follow that up on an email. And but also take that one step further and don't be afraid to invite them to coffee, because as a college student, honestly, you are somebody they want to invest in, and they're not intimidated by you. They really want to like you soak up their knowledge, they soak up your energy. It's a really good thing. So don't be afraid to follow up with professionals. And as I mentioned earlier, balance the evergreen skills and the industry knowledge when you're learning about things. And it's also good to be able to graduate also with a certification in hand. If I could have gone back and taken one class, I would have taken the class where at the end you get your lead GA or maybe your BPI certification. That would have been really cool. Didn't get that, but maybe you guys can. So lastly, to talk about my quick journey. So I had an internship with the Biomass Association and an internship with National Grid. Both of those are because I had gone to my professors and told them that I'm looking for these kind of fields. Do you have any leads? Do you have any recommendations of where I can go for? Don't underestimate how deep resources your professors are. They know a lot of people. They want you to succeed. And I think another thing that caught my eye is I was looking at a UN internship once. And in like very professional words, it essentially said that don't apply to us if you just care. We all care. That's why we're trying to handle this on a global level. But what tangible skills do you bring to the table? What unique knowledge do you bring to the table? And I think that I'm just gonna put that out there because caring, of course, we're at SUNY ESF, we all care deeply. Also, what makes you unique in the sustainability realm, and really harvest that. So after I graduated, I went to India with my friends. Anish down in the middle eating that Dorito, he made it all happen. And Shamata, a connection. She had a connection with then the highway authority in which I applied for, and I did get the position. So really develop your relationships too, your friendships with your professors and with your friends, not just for a self-gain purpose, but there's a lot of beauty that could come from being able to have a strong social network when you're in school as well. And after I was done with India, I came back to Grand Rapids, and this is symbolizing the coffee over there in the corner. Because when I came back to Grand Rapids, I actually didn't know anybody. I had left like before I was in high school. I didn't know a lot of folks. But so you had to reinvent yourself yet again, just like in college. And I think what I did right is that I showed up to a lot of places and I started growing just the folks that I knew and invited them to coffee, just like I had been talking about. And when you continue to build those relationships, even if you don't have an end goal, something good will always happen. And what I want to say clearly here is show up. One way to demonstrate your integrity is that you bring your physical presence and your attention to a space. And when you show up, when you remember, you guys are like a bright-eyed learning college students. That's like one of your greatest assets. People really want you to be there. And the professional groups that I'm a part of now, I kept showing up to the local West Michigan Sustainable Business Forum. That was very helpful. I also kept showing up to the Citizens Climate Lobby. There's actually a chapter in New York. I met her by accident once when I was a college student. Those were just so much connections to be able to find out who the professionals in the sustainability world were once I moved back to where I'm from. And eventually, when my boss did hire me, one of the things that she said was, because I always showed up at the places that she also showed up, she knew that our priorities aligned. And lastly, tell stories, because your data can empirically say the truth. But if you can't interpret that data for somebody else, the power of that data lies secretly in the numbers. And I tell you this from like a nerding out perspective, because sustainability, you also have to bring people into your world and out of your world, kind of in an amorphous way, as well as you guys are going to be graduating and you will have some internship experiences, but not that like hard experience that everybody seemingly wants you to have, something like 5 years of experience just after you graduated college. Like what gives that, right? But remember that your projects in your classes and the clubs that you've attended, this past 4 years is rich with experiences, and be able to tell the stories about that. So for example, your capstone is a deep experience. Your the project that you had, for example, for me in economics, I spoke about that final project with the STAR method. And they cited that as even more important than my actual internship when they were talking about why I got the position. So just remember that it's about storytelling and making the data speak through you. So lastly, what's on the horizons in our field, right? And in the sustainability field, you probably have noticed by now that I'm particularly energy focused in the sustainability field, but there's a lot of intersections. And what I've been able to see so far is that in my particular field, electrification of buildings and transportation, bringing it all onto a grid and off of immediate fossil fuels is definitely a trend that's happening. And then how to make that grid filled with renewable energy and batteries. This two combination is something that I'm seeing quite frequently in my work. And so the test now is, are you able to keep your buildings warm on electricity in cold climates? Are you able to keep your grid working while you're assuming that everybody else is going to have an electric grid too? Like, this is the kind of capacity conversations we're having of what it means to actually get carbon neutral. Also, I've noticed a dialogue switch. There's a dialogue switch on, instead of going green because it's good, put a feather in your cap for your company. It's a resilience thing, that we're seeing that Wall Street money is being shifted, divested, revested elsewhere. We're seeing insurance companies continue to have climate changes incorporated into their insurance policies. And even like what just happened in Texas, resilience is also a matter of being disaster ready, because that's what a changing climate means. Also, something that I've noticed that I think ESF also has going on right now, which was not around when I was, because that's how fresh this topic is centering sustainability steps in EDI and EJ, which means environmental justice and diversity, equity, inclusion. Having that centric to how we move forward in sustainability is also something that I've seen been a dialogue shift that's going to continue on after these past couple years. Affordability, equity, and resilience is more valuable right now than the words like energy efficiency, eco-friendly, going green. That's kind of old hat now. These are the new words that are catching people. Monetizing carbon is something else that I've seen that's going to be a game changer because it's bringing in new forms of financing and scalability. When you're able to monetize carbon as putting it into the market, like internalizing externality, we'll see a lot different decisions being made business-wise because the money made sense. So thank you for listening to my presentation, everybody. I really hope that we can have a dialogue after this. You can get a hold of me on, oh my gosh, I spelled my own name wrong. It's Gillian, Gillian, at usgbcwm.org. I'll put it in the chat for you so you don't have to read that. And my LinkedIn right there if you want to get it, and I can put it in the chat for you too. But thank you very much, Kathy and John and Brandon, for having me here. And I'm really looking forward to talking to the rest of you folks.